Alpha, we have a large group of dhows with a number of skiffs around them. Over.
Piracy is one of the oldest professions in the world.
Well, the most important thing is policy of intelligence.
All stations, this is Coalition Warship Sierra 23.
There are far too many ships.
2.5 miles. Nothing has changed. We're still an island nation.
It took a lot to frighten Winston Churchill, even during the very worst hours and days of the Second World War. But if anything did, it was the thought of losing the Battle of the Atlantic, which was fought and finally won from here, the Western Approaches Command Centre in Liverpool. In this bunker, deep below ground level, men and women of the Royal Navy plotted and directed the convoys that crisscrossed the Atlantic, bringing essential supplies of food, fuel, and munitions to Britain. If sea trade was vital then in the Battle of the Atlantic, it's as vital now. With nearly everything we need as a nation coming to our shores by sea, securing our seaways means vigilance must not sleep. And just as vigilance mustn't sleep at home, it mustn't sleep on passage.
Okay, let's go. Go ahead, warning shot.
Some would say it already has slept on passage, with piracy in the Gulf of Aden only just coming under some kind of control.
Second skiff coming in.
And now piracy to the west of Africa is on the increase. This Danish feature film tackles the subject head-on and shows the misery and terror piracy's victims suffer. But of course, its consequences go far beyond that suffering and loss, with sea trade itself under heavy asymmetrical threat.
If you look at the world, 70% of our planet is covered in water. The bulk of that is ungoverned space, the high seas. And there is no international police force that operates on the high seas other than the navies of the willing. The problem is that the navies are reducing in size, albeit the capability of individual platforms is increasing. That means that the greater proportion of the Earth's planet does not have effective protection, other than that's on board or around the individual merchant ship. And as trade increases, the attractiveness of the trade to criminals is going to increase as well.
But threats to the continuing viability of sea trade don't always come in the form of clear and present danger. Many see more insidious challenges facing UK maritime, less dramatic than pirates toting AK-47s, but possibly even more damaging in the long term.
The less obvious threats to our maritime transport security come from government and regulators and ship owners who don't train for the future. We have a maritime skills base that will decline by a third by 2020. That maritime skills base feeds into 635,000 jobs in the British maritime cluster. It supports gross turnover of £31 billion and £8.5 billion direct contribution to the Exchequer. If the maritime skills base isn't supported now, all of that is in jeopardy. All of that will be lost to other nations and our transport security undermined. So my message to government, to ship owners, is redouble your efforts to train British Merchant Navy seafarers for the future of our maritime skills base and for the future of our maritime transport security.
And as for that sense in the circles of political power that the safety of the realm does chiefly depend upon the Royal Navy, whatever happened to that?
People don't know we've got a navy. You'll see the odd news stories, some of them good, some are bad, but apart from that, the navy is unknown. The army, you'll see their tanks being transported down our roads, you'll see the RAF flying over the top. The navy, out of sight, out of mind. The politicians have got a very difficult job to decide what money goes into what pot to be spent in the national well-being. You don't need me to say that this country is not in a good state as far as finances are at the moment, and defence in particular is paying a very high price for that. We were promised 12 of the new Type 45 destroyers. Finance basically has dictated that we're down to 6. Let's say 5 are going to be operational at any one time. There is incredibly limited what you can achieve with your 5 ships.
As ever, securing the Seaways requires strategic thinking and planning for the long term. But even the most astute maritime leader can't control everything that comes over the horizon.
I think the biggest challenge at the moment is the fact that there are far too many ships. That's because the yard capacity was effectively doubled when the Chinese entered the market, and everybody's taken advantage of that, ordered lots more ships. We've got too many ships, makes it very difficult indeed to make money out of shipping in any sector, whether it's dry bulk, tankers or containers at this moment in time. And the other aspect of it is the way in which environmental legislation is coming in. Everybody's an environmentalist and we all support doing good things for the environment, but at the end of the day it can and will impose tremendous costs on shipping, and costs which at the moment are really rather unknown because we don't know the time frame for implementation and we don't know exactly what the rules are going to be and so on. So I think that also makes it very difficult for shipping at the moment.
I think the important thing to remember is that shipping itself is going to survive. Some of the shipping companies might not, but shipping itself has survived every recession that's ever come its way. And in fact, shipping, because it's the most economical way to trade, is the only way that we're going to get out of a recession like this. The way that we get out of global recessions is by trading more, and trade by sea means that companies and countries can trade more effectively, more efficiently, more environmentally friendly. So I think that it's less about how shipping's being affected by the recession and more about how shipping is going to be the key tool that's going to get us out of this recession.
Even when you've dealt with the known knowns like that, you still have the known unknowns to deal with. And of course, the unknown unknowns of terrorism.
Principal threat to sea trade would actually be not so much the destruction or the blowing up of a single ship, but closing access through a channel or a choke point because a ship had been blown up, because mines had been laid, etc. The wider threats of use of shipping for terrorism would be, in particular, the movement of biological and nuclear materials into countries for use by terrorists in those countries. And the big problem there, of course, is with containers and things. It is impossible to ensure that you have searched everything that's coming ashore. And so once again, it's the intelligence, knowing well in advance what might be happening and how it's being moved and what sorts of shipping are being used for it.
So, out there, something of a kaleidoscope of challenge to our vital, life-sustaining sea trade. But, especially in this Battle of the Atlantic year, history reminds us we can find good form when push comes to shove. This is Captain Johnny Walker, Royal Navy, an ace among anti-submarine captains. It was from here, in Liverpool, 70 years ago that he and his hunter-killer escorts sailed to take on the U-boats, turning back their assault on our convoys and our freedom. He and the many thousands who also fought in the Battle of the Atlantic knew what Churchill knew, that everything happening elsewhere on land, sea, or in the air depended ultimately on its outcome. True then, and as true now. The U-boat menace may be long gone, but our security as a nation still depends on the security of our seaways, and we forget it at our peril.